Hello, YouTube. I'm going to talk about Nazca lines and tell you what I know, and you may be surprised because it's a very interesting phenomenon that we're still trying to find out what happened and why. And you know that for 14 centuries, silence basically has reigned on this rocky stage. And today, Nazca Desert keeps a staunch peace. That's how I describe it. The fame came to this provincial outskirt of Peru in 1947 when the first scientific publication dedicated to the lines of the Nazca Desert appeared. Then in 1968, Eric von Daniken, in his book Memories of the Future, announced the mysterious drawings as alien runways. And this idea firmly stuck in the minds of many people. But it's more complicated than that. We cannot attribute all terrestrial enigmas to the aliens. For decades, scientists and amateurs have been trying to explain the mystery of these geometric patterns, stretching for kilometers and covering an area of about 500 square kilometers. In general terms, the history of their occurrence is clear. For several centuries, the inhabitants of southern Peru decorated the desert areas near the coast with mysterious signs drawn on the ground. The surface of the desert is covered with dark stones, but if it's worth removing them to the side, and then the light sedimentary rocks under them are exposed. It is this sharp color contrast that the ancient Indians used to create their drawings, geoglyphs. The dark ground served as a background for huge figures or shapes, images of animals, and above all, trapezoids, spirals, and straight lines. But what are they here for? Well, the Nazca Plateau continues to the north to the Atacama Desert, stretching along the Pacific coast of South America. This is one of the driest regions in the world. 10 millimeters of precipitation falls here every year. So it's not surprising that the geoglyphs are well preserved. German researcher Maria Reiche devoted her entire life to the study and preservation of the Nazca geoglyphs. She got UNESCO to add them to the World Heritage List. Cyclopean side signs, which have no equal on Earth, attract many researchers. Again, who created them and when? And for what purpose? Archaeologists associate the geoglyphs with the Nazca culture, a pre-Columbian civilization that inhabited the plateau in the first 6 centuries of our era. The artifacts found indicate that the Nazca were engaged in agriculture. Potatoes, maize, pumpkin, local fruits were grown. Llamas and alpacas were bred. The Nazca made surprisingly elegant ceramic dishes with a wall thickness of 4 millimeters. They were skilled weavers. 15 color pigments were used in ceramics and fabric, and their patterns are strikingly similar to the geoglyphs. These people lived on the banks of rivers in small settlements. The only major city is Kawachi, which served as a ceremonial center and necropolis. Almost nothing is known about the social and political structure of Nazca, and religious beliefs were based on 2 main concepts, water and fertility. By the 6th century, the Nazca culture has declined. Radiocarbon analysis of pieces of wood and textiles found inside or near the geoglyphs, calibration by annual 3 rings, allow us to conclude that the geoglyphs were created in the period from the 2nd century BC to the 6th century AD. Meanwhile, archaeologists admitted that the tradition of such shapes is more ancient. In 2018, this hypothesis was confirmed. Archaeologists, with the help of drones, discovered more than 5 dozen drawings on the Palpa Plateau north of Nazca. As reported by National Geographic magazine, which published exclusive photographs of geoglyphs, some of them belonged to Nazca, but most of them were the work of their predecessors. Paracas and Topara, who lived here since the 8th century BC. These figures, mainly warriors, are on the hills and are visible from the villages below. In August of 2019, Japanese researchers published the results of an analysis of 16 geoglyphs depicting birds. They analyzed separately the shape of beaks, heads, necks, bodies, wings, tails, paws, and compared them with the more than 200 drawings of local Peruvian birds made by scientists. So the species was identified only by 3 images: a hermit hummingbird living in the forest of northern and eastern Peru, a coastal pelican, and a parrot, exotic for Nazca given that the ocean is 50 kilometers away from there. The remaining bird geoglyphs were not identified. According to the authors of the work, these are either extinct species or simply inaccurate images. Surprisingly, everything that scientists know today about geoglyphs does not bring us closer to the answer of the question, why did Nazca make them? In the late 1960s, Reiche, together with an American archaeologist, Paul Kasak, the discoverer of geoglyphs, hypothesized that they served astronomical purposes. Perhaps they were a calendar indicating the sunrise and sunset of various celestial objects. The researcher asked Canadian astronomer Sidney Vanderberg to check this hypothesis. He analyzed the azimuths of the lines, the statistical significance of their distribution, the centers of gravity, and found nothing to confirm the calendar hypothesis. In addition to the grandiosity of lines and shapes stretching tens and hundreds of meters, several other facts indicate this. Almost all lines are connected with the city temple of Kawachi, and most importantly, they are visible only from the air. It was probably meant only for the divine eyes. Back in 1990, American astronomist Anthony Aveni suggested that linear geoglyphs served as a place for ritual walks. 2 decades later, this idea was confirmed by scientists from Germany, who measured the magnetic field anomalies with a mobile cesium magnometer, showing a change in soil density with depth. Scientists examined the inside of a large trapezoid near the city of Palpa and found that the soil there is denser than around. This happens if it has been trampled for a long time. In addition, ceramics have been found within the geoglyph. The authors concluded that Nazca walked back and forth inside the trapeze, offering prayers and making offerings to the gods. Presumably around 200 BC, a real revolution in art took place in the Nazca Desert. Artists who previously covered only rocks and slopes with paintings undertake to decorate the largest canvas given to them by nature, the plateau stretched out in front of them. A certain creator drew the contours of the future figure or shape, and his assistants removed stones from the surface, according to the renowned German archaeologist Markus Reindel. For the masters of monumental graphics, who had a 1,000-year tradition behind them, there was a place to turn around. However, now, instead of figurative compositions, they prefer to work with geometric shapes and lines. They reach gigantic sizes, but in fact, there's nothing extravagant, cosmic about them, according to the archaeologist. A pair of straight lines, no matter how long you extend them, will remain only a pair of straight lines. And in order to understand it, you do not need to get into the cockpit of a sports plane. Of course, in the Nazca Desert, there are also huge images of animals: monkey, spider, whale, which is better to admire from somewhere from an elevation, but these drawings are rare. Okay, that's how they think. Everywhere, including in the archaeological literature, it is certainly said that geoglyphs can be viewed at best from a bird's eye view, said archaeologist Karsten Lambers, a member of the expedition. It is enough to visit the area to make sure that these signs are clearly visible from the ground. Approximately 2/3 of geoglyphs are clearly distinguishable from anywhere in the surrounding area. In general, they were not created in order to consider them, Randall emphasized. Rather, they were part of an open air sanctuary. They can be called ceremonial shapes or figures. Archaeological research has shown that these lines have a purely practical or rather mystical purpose. At the corners and extremities of the drawings, there were structures made of stone, clay, and raw bricks. In total, researchers counted about 100 similar ruins. The remains of textile fabrics, plants, crayfish, guinea pigs, and spondylus shells were found in them, presumably sacrificial gifts. Archaeologists have interpreted these finds as altars or miniature temples that were used in certain rituals. Which ones? Spondylus shells attracted particular attention. Throughout the Andean region, these beautiful shells were considered symbols of water and fertility. However, this mollusk lives in tropical waters, almost 2,000 kilometers north of the Nazca Desert, and penetrates to its shores only when El Nino comes. Then the warm sea current deviates far to the south, and heavy precipitation falls on the coast of Peru. Obviously, since ancient times, people have associated the appearance of spondylus with approaching downpours, and an unusual shell brought water to the fields and happiness to the families. By donating it to the altar, the inhabitants of the desert hoped to get for rain from the sky. Next to the drawings, the researchers found a lot of vessels buried in the ground, obviously during the performance of some rituals. Holes were also noticed, into which, judging by their diameter and depth, masts up to 10 meters high were hoisted. Panels must have fluttered on them. Images of similar masts decorated with flags have already been found on ceramic vessels. According to geophysical studies, the soil along the lines, and their depth reaches about 30 centimeters, is very strongly compacted, especially trampled 70 drawings depicting animals and certain creatures. They make up about a tenth of all terrestrial graffiti. It looks like crowds of people have been marching here for centuries. The whole area was the venue for various festivals related to the culture of water and fertility. The arid climate has turned the inhabitants of the Nazca Desert into great artists and engineers. Even Maria Reiche, describing the drawings found in the desert, noted the length and direction of each segment were carefully measured and recorded. Approximate measurements would not be enough to reproduce such perfect outlines that we see thanks to aerial photography. A deviation of only a few inches would distort the proportions of the drawing. Already in the first millennium BC, the ancient Peruvians learned to pump groundwater into cisterns through pipes laid underground, creating reserves of life-giving moisture. Very important. The indigenous system of canals they built, including underground ones, is still used by local residents today. Once, with the help of this network of channels, ancient Indians irrigated fields where beans and potatoes, pumpkin and cassava, avocado and peanuts were grown. The main materials they used on the farm were cotton and cane. They caught fish with nets and hunted seals. Thin-walled ceramics were made, which were painted with bright, colorful scenes. By the way, an elongated head was considered the ideal of beauty among local residents, and therefore boards were tied to the forehead of infants in order to deform the skull while it was growing. They also produce skull trepanation with skill, I'm sure, and some of the operated ones lived long enough after this procedure. But the time allotted to the Nazca culture was already expiring. The drier it became on the plateau, the more often the priests had to perform magical ceremonies to summon rain. 9 out of 10 lines and trapezoids are facing towards the mountains from where the saving rains came. For a long time, magic helped, and the clouds that brought moisture returned until around 600 AD, the gods finally became angry with the people who settled this region. The largest drawing that appeared in the Nazca Desert date back to the time when the rains almost stopped here. The following picture is drawn in the imagination. People are literally begging the harsh rain god to heed their suffering. They hope that at least these signals given to him and he will notice. So polar explorers lost in the ice paint the tent red, so if someone flying through the sky sees a sign of their trouble. But the Indian god remained, as modern geographers testify, blind to these pleas imprinted into the flesh of the earth. It did not rain. Their faith was powerless. In the end, the Indians left their native but harsh land and went into the search of a flourishing country. When a few centuries later the climate became milder and people settled on the Nazca Plateau again, they knew nothing about those who once lived here. Only the lines on the ground stretching into the distance or intersecting reminded them that either the gods descended to earth here or people tried to talk to the gods. But the meaning of the drawings was already forgotten. Only now scientists are beginning to understand why these drawings appeared. These huge hieroglyphs, it seems, ready to survive eternity. However, it would be wrong to call the only viewers of these drawings some gods immersed either in nirvana or in their universal business. These lines are more of a scene, not a picture, according to Reindel. However, he himself does not undertake to judge why the lines are arranged this way and not otherwise, and why they form this or that pattern. Obviously, this had a religious background, but due to the lack of collected facts, scientists continue to argue about the religion professed by the people who inhabited the Nazca Desert for 2 millennia, to argue about the nature of their society and its political structure. This desert definitely still holds many mysteries, and scientists can talk as much as they can. There are other views as well. But anyway, these mysteries will have to be solved, and scientists don't want the participation of people interested in the esoteric sciences. According to them, there is too much of the mundane, everyday vein in the secrets of the Nazca Desert. Well, you're free to think. We still have some freedom left. In 2007, American and Peruvian archaeologists discovered a mine in the area of Nazca Desert in which iron ore, hematite, was mined almost 2,000 years ago, long before the arrival of the Spanish conquistadores. Then this mineral was ground into powder, preparing bright red ochre. American researcher Vaughan believes. Archaeologists know that the people of the New and Old World mined iron ore thousands of years ago, he explained. In the Old World, namely in Africa, they started doing this about 40,000 years ago. It is known that the peoples who inhabited Mexico, Central and North America in ancient times also mined minerals containing iron. However, archaeologists have not been able to find a single ancient mine for a long time, until a few years ago a cave in southern Peru attracted their attention. Its area was about 500 square meters. During excavations, stone tools, fragments of dishes, cotton and wool fabrics, shells, vessels hollowed out of the pumpkins, and corn cobs were discovered here. Radiocarbon analysis has shown that the age of organic minerals ranges from 500 to 1960 years, 1960. According to archaeologists, during this time, about 700 cubic meters of rock with a total mass of about 3,700 tons were extracted from the mountain, and all in order to extract its coveted ochre, which the residents of the surrounding areas needed. It was used to paint ceramic vessels and fabrics. Indians painted their bodies and city walls of houses with it. The Iron Age in this land of artists has not begun. In the Old World, metals were used to make various tools or weapons. One noted, in America, they were just an object of prestige, an ornament of the nobility. So understand the use of the metal. Anyway, Then there was something else. In the fall of 2008, thanks to the photographs taken from space, Italian researchers discovered the pyramid in the Nazca Desert, filled in many centuries ago. The area of its foundation was almost 10,000 square meters. The pyramid was erected 1.5 kilometers from Kauhachi by people belonging to the Nazca culture. Presumably, it consisted of 4 terraces located on top of each other. The structure of the terrain is particularly noticeable in satellite photos, since the sun-dried clay bricks are very different in their density from the neighboring soil sites. The inhabitants of Kawachi buried these pyramids, like many other buildings, under a layer of sand after 2 disasters broke out in the neighborhood, one after the other, a flood and then a strong earthquake. Obviously, archaeologists believe after these disasters, the local priests lost faith in the magical power of the pyramid and buried it. So they did with the rest of the structures. However, this guess is only speculative. No one knows what really happened to them. And I will suggest dig a little bit deeper. This is Peru, and I'll add a few words later. Here are some ideas from the scientists about the Nazca lines. Recall that the first researcher of Nazca, Paul Kossak, noticed back in 1939 that individual lines point to some stars and constellations, corresponding to different phases of the moon and the points of sunrise and sunset. Based on this, he hypothesized that the Nazca geoglyphs are a grandiose astronomical calendar. Magic lines. Author Professor Federico Kaufmann Deutsch. The famous archaeologist proposed a theory according to which the Nazca lines are magical lines that originated from the cult of the cat in the Chavin de Huantara sports stadium by Georg von Browning. He had the idea that the Nazca plateau was used for sprint races for ritual purposes. This theory was supported by the famous Professor Huomar von Dietfurt. Water cult and dowsing. David Johnson believes that the Nazca figures are markers for groundwater. Trapezoids show the flow of streams. Zigzags where they end, lines indicate the direction of currents. Reindel agrees with Johnson's theory. In addition, he explains the nature of the figures using vines to search for groundwater and shamanic flights to review the drawings. The Fata Morgana effect, author Professor Helmut Riebuch put forward the idea that important places of worship like Stonehenge, the pyramids, and of course Nazca were built in places where the Fata Morgana phenomenon often occurs. The sign of Atlantis. Yuri Murzek has a different solution of Nazca lines and figures. This is a very exhaustive study of the monkey figure. It includes a geometric code that talks about certain aspects of analytical geometry. This code coincides with the code of the prehistoric La Marche in France. Loom. Author Professor Henry Sterling thinks that Nazca Indians used the line system as a loom. In the Paracas culture, fabrics were made from a single thread, but the Indians had neither wheels nor looms, so they organized hundreds of people who held this thread. Their position on the ground was determined by the lines. Map. Hungarian mathematician Dr. Zoltan Zelko analyzed the Nazca line system, comparing it with the other ancient sites in Peru. He found out that the Nazca lines could be 100 by 800 map showing the area around Lake Titicaca. Hallucinogens. Evan Hedingham believes that the solution to the Nazca mystery lies in the use of a powerful hallucinogenic plant like psilocybin. With its help, the Indians arranged shamanic flights to survey the surface of the pampas. The lines themselves are a consequence of worshipping the deity of the mountain. By Professor Alden Masson, our main interest is in graves and deformed skulls of the Nazcan culture. And his commentary is this, on the lines, signs for the heavenly gods. Writing system. Albrecht Kottmann tried a different approach to the mystery of Nazca. He divided all the figures into separate parts and analyzed their geometry. So he divided the bird with a length of 286 meters into 22 parts. Kottmann found that the head consists of 2 parts, the neck consists of 5 parts, the body consists of 3 parts, and the remaining 12 parts from a beak. The proportion between the beak and the rest of the bird is 6 by 5. Cotton believes that geometric signs and figures are a writing system with giant and small letters. Preparations of provisions. William Asbel. According to this hypothesis, the Nazca rulers ordered the drawings of lines to control the population. When the Indians were working, they could not produce children at the same time. But what is it for? Isbell believes that the Nazcans could not keep the harvest for a long time, and in fertile years the population increased dramatically. In 2022, ancient drawings, by the way, of funny seals have been discovered on the Nazca plateau in Peru. This is the latest. This has completely confused scientists. Scientists have determined exactly how the geoglyphs were made. Nazca is a rocky desert. To mark the lines, people cleaned the surface of the stones and stacked them immediately along the contour, leaving open lighter areas of the earth. Thus, the boundaries of the geoglyphs are marked by piles of boulders, which means that there is a unique opportunity to determine the time of their movement. Well, 168 new mysterious drawings were discovered on the Nazca Plateau in Peru. 168 previously unknown images, geoglyphs, were found by Japanese scientists from Yamagata University, having examined the famous Peruvian Nazca Desert from the air. The Japanese have been exploring here for a long time, studying the pictures of the area. This time, they collaborated with the American computer scientists from IBM J. Watson Research Center, used drones and used artificial intelligence AI to analyze the information they collected. Researchers and the AI, with their discovery, to put it mildly, confused numerous colleagues from other countries who believed they had more or less figured out the purpose of ancient mysterious art. In already known images of giant shapes or figures, it was believed that they were addressed either to the gods or to the aliens or to representatives of a terrestrial but a more advanced civilization, because they are visible only from the air, from a great altitude, that is, from some kind of aircraft. By the way, the general public itself learned about geoglyphs only in the 20th century, after the airplane flew over the plateau for the first time. I've heard other accounts of a scientist who discovered, local scientists, way before, but for this we need more exploration. So if I did not mention him and he existed, my apologies. Anyway, and that's what they call unknown drawings of a completely inexplicable kind. They are small and seemingly comic. The new ones, some small cat, dogs, birds, and snakes of no more than 10 meters in size. What are they for? There are no assumptions yet, but all the newly found drawings are definitely ancient. The images were painted in the period from 100 BC to 300 AD. See, that's what the Japanese discovered. The Nazca Plateau is also lined with thousands of straight lines and white stripes stretching for many kilometers. Remember it, they seem to have been left by laser beams fired from space, and there are no rational explanations for this mystery, but it is rarely remembered. Scientists seem to have figured out that the spirals, pukios, as the locals call them, there are several thousand spirals on the plateau. They are arranged in a heap, lined with cobblestones, and go underground. Italian archaeologists led by Rosa La Saponara from the Institute of Methodologies for Environmental Analysis in Italy guessed about the amazing but very practical purpose. The plateau, again, is full of spirals going deep, lined with stones and holes. Who built such strange structures, which the locals called pokios? For what? Scientists were lost in their guesses, as well as about the giant drawings. So, here's what the Italians say. Satellite images made it possible to estimate the spread of the pokios across the plateau, and they suggested that they were part of ancient irrigation structures, and once served to raise water from underground aquifers. The water was lifted by the wind, which penetrated spirals into the hose pipes. This drove it drove water to the underground channels. The ingenuity of these ancient inhabitants of the plateau shocked archaeologists, but thanks to the Italian scientists, representatives of the Nazca culture, this is her idea how it was done, had water all year round, not only for irrigation of agricultural land, but also for household needs. Irrigation turned one of the driest places on earth into a flourishing valley. People sent the excess water to underground storages, above which pukios were also located. So there was water, and there was no need to placate gods, so to say, as the German archaeologists believe, to pack up and take off, right? However, over time, everything falls into disrepair. Now, only a small part of the former Pukio system remains. Does the ancient hydraulic system have anything to do with the drawings of the Nazca Plateau? Perhaps. Some geoglyphs are associated with aquifers and underground channels, but most of them are not connected. Archaeologists are sure of only one thing. Both the construction of the Pukio system and the creation of drawings went on for many years, and the mobilization of tens of thousands of people, like the pyramids, right, in Egypt, as far as we know, or guess. And this is possible only with a strong centralized government that knew what to do, clearly formulated the tasks. And this despite the fact that there were no decrees from the government, there was no writing, as far as we know, in the Nazca culture. At what specific time were the Pukio system and drawings created? There is no exact answer. An estimated period is from 1000 years BC to 750 AD. A recent study by Tomasz Gorka from the University of Munich in Germany did not add clarity to the answer to the question of who and why drew the Nazca Desert in Peru. However, scientists have found there are incomparably more arts there than is commonly believed. The researchers walked around the neighborhood of the city of Palpa, 400 kilometers south of the capital of Peru, Lima, where geometric shapes are mainly located, trapezoids, triangles, just lines. They were not too lazy. They examined more than 60 hectares using devices that registered magnetic anomalies. And they found that there are many others under the drawings that are now visible. In much the same way, under the paintings of artists, thanks to X-rays, former plots are found, closed by later overlays. The method of drawing lines is known, according to Gorka. Red oxidized pebbles are thrown aside, but it seems that the work was greatly stretched in time. Either the drawings were periodically corrected or the new ones were added. What is now visible from the air is the latest version. Gorka's colleague Carsten Lambers from the German University of Constance in Germany confirms that magnetic anomalies of the drawings exist, and some of them are stronger than others. The Germans believe that the drawings were applied for some kind of ritual purposes. It is noticeable that along the lines where locals regularly walked back and forth and heavily trampled, perhaps these walks were necessary during prayers. And what? Who knows? Maybe the Nazca prayed that the water would not be lost? Well, some lines on the plateau in red and green, you can see, were drawn later. Okay? Now let me tell you about the country I'm from and scientists there. I mean, back in the Soviet times, I remember there was a very cool hypothesis about Nazca people being able to fly their glider-like aircraft, and there was proof on how it was done. I will do a separate video about it. This is very interesting because it shows the technique, and the scientist was really bright. We're talking about late 1970s. And also, Russian researchers of paranormal phenomena, Khazanovich and Gerstein, in the book UFO Zone, suggested that pouring combustible liquid along the lines and special grooves and lighting up created a splendid spectacle in the night sky. Just imagine it. Who the viewers were on the ground and who watched this in the sky, we just do not know. But we can't attribute it all to aliens. I have seen example after example of human ingenuity in the past centuries, and I've described it in my work as well. Plus, Peru deserves a number of videos. There are such astonishing, amazing structures that could not have built with the extent of knowledge that we attribute to the population there. But it was, and there are no machines that show how it was built. So we'll talk about it in the future. And we should talk more about the incredible and amazing mysteries on the planet contained in the humanoid anthropomorphic juggles located on the desert plateau of Palpa in Peru. Well, surprisingly, much less is known about the geoglyphs of Palpa Plateau than about those located on the neighboring Nazca Plateau. And we will talk about it and about other interesting, fascinating sites in Peru. And my information comes mainly from the former Soviet Union and countries that came up after it, and you will be amazed as well. This is what I wanted to let you know about the Nazca lines, and as you can see, as our technology improves and we'll find out more through the use of, I'm sure, archaeological satellites and other modern techniques, we just have more questions. We know very little, as far as I can see, about the past of our planet. Thank you for your attention to my work. If you can support me, you will find the links on how to do it in description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please tell others. Thank you.